He was a black CEO who walked into his own hotel, but they didn't know it. To them, he was just another outsider, unworthy of respect, not the owner of the Carter Plaza or the most luxurious hotel chain in the United States. Dressed simply, Jamal Carter arrived to revisit the place he'd built with his own sweat, only to be met with disdain. What no one there realized was that this unassuming man held the keys to it all. When the truth surfaced, those who scorned him were left with bitter regret. The lobby of the Carter Plaza, in the heart of Manhattan, New York's upscale district, was buzzing that Friday afternoon. Men in suits mingled with women carrying designer luggage, while staff darted back and forth, trying to keep everything under control before the weekend rush. Jamal Carter arrived alone, wearing plain jeans, an unmarked t-shirt, and his hair pulled back in a quick, neat style. His gaze was calm, observant. He didn't need fanfare. This place was part of his story. Years ago, with determination in his heart, he'd signed the contract to buy his first hotel right here. Now he just wanted to relive that moment, to breathe in the scent of the place that once represented his greatest triumph. As he stepped into the lobby, he smiled faintly, noticing some changes, new artwork, modern lighting, but the spirit of the place still lingered. Nostalgic, he walked up to the front desk. "Good afternoon," he said serenely. "I'd like to take a look at the new suites. I heard there was a renovation." The receptionist, a young blonde with an unfriendly expression, didn't even look up. "Do you have a reservation, sir?" "No, but then you can't come in," she cut him off sharply. "The hotel isn't open for tours." Jamal tried to stay calm. "Look, she interrupted again, now staring him down with a look heavy with judgment. "If you don't have a reservation, there's no point in arguing. You can wait outside." A few guests began to glance over. A woman watching from the corner of the lobby whispered to her husband, "This is what happens when they let just anyone in." Jamal took a deep breath. It wasn't the first time he'd faced this, but what came next was even worse. The receptionist picked up the phone and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Mark, can you come here? There's a man insisting on entering without a reservation. He's causing a disturbance." Moments later, Mark Thompson appeared tall, hair slicked back, gray suit, pristine, with that fake smile of someone who thinks they run the world. He sized Jamal up like he was a problem, not a guest. "What's going on here?" he asked, crossing his arms. "I was just trying—" "Sir, please, let's not make a scene," Mark interrupted without even listening. "This is a private establishment. Without a reservation, I'll have to ask you to leave." "Do you know who you're talking to?" "Someone who clearly doesn't belong here," Mark shot back, a smirk curling his lips. "Security." Two guards approached swiftly, as if Jamal posed some kind of threat. He glanced around, disdainful stares, hushed whispers, a few people even chuckling like they were watching a comedy show. Jamal felt a lump in his throat, not from shame, but from indignation. He could have shouted, demanded respect right then, but instead he pulled out his phone and said calmly, "Call the president of the Carter Group. Tell him the founder is being kicked out of his own hotel." Mark laughed outright. "Sure, and I'm the owner of the Waldorf Astoria." Jamal locked eyes with him, unflinching. "You'll find out who I am soon enough, and when you do, you'll wish you'd never treated me like this." Mark sighed impatiently as the guards awaited his command. The lobby fell silent, everyone watching what seemed like a public humiliation unfold. Jamal stood firm, though inside he felt the familiar sting of a wound that never fully healed. "I don't know what this guy thinks he's doing here," Mark said sarcastically, glancing around for approval. "This isn't the place for this kind of nonsense." The phrase "this kind" hit Jamal like a punch to the gut. To Mark, he wasn't a man, he was a type, a stereotype, an invisible threat. It didn't matter what he'd achieved or the name on the company's deed. In Mark's eyes, he was just another outsider. A guest seated nearby muttered, "You can tell he doesn't belong here. Look at his clothes." A waiter passing by whispered to a colleague, "These people think they can walk in anywhere now." Jamal pretended not to hear, but each word cut like a slow knife. He was used to this judgment since his teenage years, being followed by security in stores or stepping onto corporate stages only to be mistaken for the janitor. Growing up with his mom and 3 siblings in a cramped apartment in the Bronx, he'd dreamed of a better life. And he'd made it. But no one talked about the weight of winning, the burden of carrying your story in a world that only values what shines on the surface. Mark turned to the guards. "Please escort this gentleman out politely." The men stepped closer, one saying, "Sir, let's go." Jamal lifted his chin, looked the guard in the eye, and said firmly, I'm not leaving until someone from the board answers to me. You're causing too much trouble already, Mark snapped. If you don't leave now, I'll call the police. The word police hung in the air like a calculated threat. Mark knew exactly what he was doing. It was the ultimate weapon against someone like Jamal. Jamal exhaled deeply. Go ahead. And while you're at it, explain to them why you're throwing the owner of this hotel out of his own property. Mark burst into a mocking laugh that echoed through the lobby. Oh, that's a good one. Owner of the hotel? All right, Mr. Carter, go play businessman somewhere else. Jamal unlocked his phone and made a single call. Leroy, it's me. I need you at the Carter Plaza now. I'm being thrown out. Pause. Mark stopped laughing when he heard the name. That's right. Bring legal too. Let them talk to the manager directly. He hung up. Mark frowned. Leroy? Which Leroy? Jamal didn't answer, just crossed his arms and sat on a lobby sofa, like someone who knew exactly what was coming. The silence returned. No one laughed anymore. People began to wonder, what if he's telling the truth? Jamal was born and raised in the Bronx, the third of 4 siblings, brought up by a single mom who worked as a housekeeper across the city. From a young age, he learned the world wouldn't be kind to him, and if he wanted to succeed, he'd have to be twice as good and 3 times as tough. Their apartment was a small, noisy place with a leaky roof that roared when it rained sometimes inside too. He slept on a shared mattress with his siblings, all cramped but full of dreams. His mom, Miss Clara, stretched every penny, often skipping her own meals to make sure her kids ate. Jamal was a dedicated student, spending hours in the public library with math books and biographies, while others his age gave up on school to work. One day, he read about Reginald Lewis and became obsessed. I'm going to own my own company someday, he'd tell his mom, sprawled on the floor with a notebook. You will, son. Don't let anyone tell you you can't, she'd reply, her eyes gleaming with pride. At 16, he landed his first real job as a bellhop at a small hotel in Queens, taking 3 buses across the city, leaving home before dawn. There, he discovered his love for the hotel business, making guests happy, organizing spaces, dreaming up ways to improve their experience. But he also faced sideways glances, racist jokes, and distrust from coworkers. He's only here because of quotas, some said. Looks like he'd steal something, others whispered. Jamal didn't let it shake him. He worked hard, took night classes, earned technical certifications, and later won a scholarship to a private college. He graduated with a degree in business administration and climbed the ranks supervisor, then manager. Each promotion came with sweat and grit. Over the years, he saved every dime, lived lean, and reinvested it all. At 33, he saw his chance. An old hotel in Manhattan on the brink of collapse was up for sale. Jamal went all in: loans, partners, a rock-solid business plan. That's when the Carter Group was born. Buying that hotel was the start of everything. He cried alone in room 205 the day he got the keys, thinking of Ms. Clara, who never lived to see her son build an empire. Today, the group owned 6 hotels in New York and 2 more in the works, but none held the symbolic weight of that first one, the Carter Plaza. And it was right there that they were treating him like dirt, what the world saw. Now the polished CEO of America's biggest hotel chain was just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it was the loneliness, the exhaustion that never faded, the wary looks in boardrooms, the awkward silences when he entered spaces full of suited men who didn't expect him to be the boss. Jamal learned early that being good wasn't enough. He had to be flawless. While white peers stumbled and got second chances, he was constantly tested. A shaky pitch, a missed stat, a firm word, all became ammunition to claim he didn't fit. He'd sat through meetings where they mistook him for an assistant, ignored him in presentations until someone realized he was in charge. Even then, praise came with qualifiers. Wow, you don't seem like you're from the Bronx, or so articulate, surprising. Jamal smiled, but inside, it stung. Early on, he'd thought about quitting days. He cried in corporate bathrooms, or rode the subway home in silence, wanting to disappear. But every time he considered stopping, he thought of his mom, his siblings, the kids from his block who never got a shot, and he kept going. He slept 4 hours a night, studied on buses, worked double shifts, and gave more than anyone asked. When he founded the Carter Group, he knew failure wasn't an option. If he slipped, they'd say he proved them right all along. The first time he tried opening a business account, a bank manager told him, "Sir, we don't have plans for your profile." Have you considered a small business loan? He was already an LLC. He got credit through a small fintech with sky-high rates no white entrepreneur would have touched. But he took it because it was that or nothing, and he turned that nothing into an empire. Over time, he was invited to speak at conferences, won awards, graced the covers of business magazines. Yet, in hotels like his own, he was still seen as an outsider. That afternoon, sitting on the lobby sofa waiting for legal to arrive, Jamal wasn't just being disrespected as a person. He was seeing firsthand how invisible he still was, how structural prejudice operated, quiet, cold, and cruel. In that silence between whispers, he made a choice. I'll never let someone like Mark keep running a space I built with so much sweat. What Mark and the others didn't know was that this moment would change everything, not just for him, but for everyone who thought they could judge a man by his skin or his clothes. The Carter Plaza wasn't just another hotel in the chain. For Jamal, it was a milestone, a tangible piece of his history. It was the first property he'd bought with his brand new LLC. No safety net, no strong credit, no backing, just guts and a business plan in his backpack. He remembered the day he walked in as the buyer. The building was run-down leaky pipes, torn carpets, outdated furniture. The old owner, drowning in debt, almost laughed when Jamal made his offer. "You want to buy this hotel?" he asked, smirking. "Yes, and I'm going to make it the best in the city," Jamal replied with the same resolve he carried now. The first renovation came with heavy loans. He trained the initial staff himself, slept in bare rooms during construction, ate takeout on the floor with the crew. Every detail bore his touch, the wallpaper he picked out, the discount light fixtures, the art from local Bronx artists. He could still recall the first booking, a young couple who stayed 2 nights and left a note. "Best service we've ever had. We'll be back." Jamal cried that day, not for the money, but because he finally felt he was on the right path. Over time, the hotel became a standout, turned a profit, and with that profit, he opened a second, a third, until he was running 8 properties. The Carter Plaza remained his heart. He'd turned down multi-million-dollar offers to sell it. It was where everything began, where his mom helped him clean the first room when he couldn't afford a full staff, where he spent his first New Year's as a business owner alone on the rooftop, watching fireworks and giving silent thanks. That day, he'd chosen to return alone, no driver, no entourage, just him and his memories. He wanted to see how the hotel was holding up, to feel that air of victory only this place gave him. Instead, he found contempt judged for his clothes, his skin, his simplicity, ignored, humiliated, and threatened at the door of the place he'd built. Now, seated in the lobby he'd once designed, he watched the chandeliers he'd chosen, the rugs he'd sourced from upstate, the plants he'd insisted be watered often. It was all part of him except the respect, and that he wouldn't let slide. Jamal stayed seated on the lobby sofa, legs crossed, gazing calmly at the entrance. On the outside, he was composed. Inside, a volcano ready to erupt. The hotel staff kept moving, though. Mark, the manager, now watched from a distance, still wearing that smug look. One receptionist muttered, "He's still here? Thinks he's somebody he'll see." Waiting for his buddy to pretend he's rich, a maid chuckled nearby, oblivious to who he was. Despite the tension, the place seemed to hum along, guests checking in, orders being filled, phones ringing. But around Jamal, the vibe was different, as if he'd gone from a person to a walking nuisance. The younger guard, visibly uneasy, approached and said, "Sir, want some water? Can I help with anything?" Jamal looked at him. His tone was softer, less cocky, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Thanks, I'm just waiting. You sure you don't want to step outside?" The manager's going to learn something today," Jamal replied with a faint smile. Mark strode over again. "Didn't you get it yet? This isn't a protest spot. You're disrupting the guests. Want me to call the cops for real?" Jamal stood slowly, sizing him up. "You really think you can kick me out?" "I know I can, and I will." "You don't run this place," Mark shot back, irony dripping from his voice. Just then, the hotel's revolving doors swung open hard. 2 men in suits and a woman in a blazer with a badge stormed in, steps purposeful. The receptionist's eyes widened. It was Leroy, the Carter Group's legal director, alongside Camille, the president's executive assistant, trailed by 2 private security guards. "Good afternoon," Leroy said, voice steady. We're here on orders from Mr. Jamal Carter, founder and CEO of the Carter Group. Silence spread like a shockwave. Mark went pale. Jamal Carter? The man he'd been insulting for nearly an hour was now addressed as Mr. Albert. Carter, by a legal director the same man he'd threatened to boot, was the owner of everything, including his paycheck. Jamal crossed his arms and faced Mark, whose jaw now hung slack. The realization hit. Mark stammered, struggling to process it. His eyes darted from Leroy to Jamal, as if his brain refused to accept it. "Mr. Carter," he mumbled, barely audible. Jamal stepped forward, his sneakers now thudding with authority on the marble floor. "Yes, Jamal Carter. Founder, CEO, and sole owner of the Carter Group, the name on this hotel's deed, the name on the walls you've only ever helped manage," he said, voice firm but even. Guests edged closer, curious. Staff froze mid-task. There was no ignoring this now. Camille opened a folder and handed Mark some papers. "Here are the updated business registry records, and these are internal memos emailed in recent weeks, reinforcing our new inclusion and respect policies, including a photo of Mr. Carter." Mark took the documents, hands shaking, unable to meet anyone's gaze. "I'm so sorry, sir. I had no idea you were so what, Mark?" Jamal cut in, unshaken. "Simple? Black? No tie?" Mark stumbled over his words, no reply coming. "Don't worry," Jamal went on. "You didn't mess up because you didn't know who I was. You messed up because you judged who I seemed to be. You didn't see a human, just a type." The silence was thick, no one daring to breathe. "And the worst part," he said, scanning the room, "it wasn't just you. It was the receptionist, the maid, the guests who laughed, the guards who followed orders. You all looked at me and decided I didn't belong, not because I lacked a badge, but because you lacked respect." Jamal turned to Leroy. "I want a board meeting tomorrow morning, and Mark Thompson's out effective immediately, with cause." Mark tried to protest. "Sir, please, I can explain it to legal, not me." Jamal faced the receptionist. "You, young lady, have 2 minutes to take off that uniform and leave your badge on the desk." She paled, but didn't argue, silently setting the badge down with trembling hands. Jamal took a deep breath, locking eyes with everyone around. "You forget the world's changed. Anyone who still judges people by their skin or their clothes will get left behind." With the room still hushed, Jamal walked to the center of the lobby. The soft trickle of the decorative fountain was the only sound. It was as if time had stopped, and everyone there knew they were about to hear something unforgettable. "I didn't come here today as a company president," he began, voice low but strong. "I came as a man, as Ms. Clara's son, who scrubbed floors so I could have the right to dream." He paused, glancing at the staff still present. "I know this place better than anyone here. I painted these walls. I cleaned the first rooms. I greeted guests with a smile even when I hadn't slept. And you know why? Because I believed every person deserves dignity." Tears welled up quietly in some employees' eyes. Even guests who'd smirked earlier now looked down. "But today I saw there's a kind of filth you can't wipe away with a rag," Jamal said, staring at Mark from afar. "It's the filth of prejudice, of judgment, of arrogance." He turned to the young guard who'd offered him water. "What's your name?" "Malik, sir," he replied, startled. "Malik, thank you. You were the only one here who treated me like a person. That doesn't go unnoticed. Starting Monday, you're promoted. You'll train as security coordinator." Malik's eyes widened. "For real? For real. And if you keep that good heart, you'll go further than folks with degrees and ties." Jamal addressed the rest. "Starting today, every employee here will go through new training not just on service, but on respect, empathy, inclusion. I don't care if you can make a bed in 10 minutes. If you can't look a guest in the eye, you're no good." He stepped to the front desk, surveying the space. This place was built to welcome everyone, simple folks, rich folks, any color, any background. Anyone who can't respect that won't work here anymore. Jamal knew he couldn't fix the whole world, but he could start where he had power. In that hotel, in that moment, he was taking a massive step, not just for his own story, but for everyone from where he came from, still treated as invisible. In the days that followed, the Carter Plaza was never the same. The scene's fallout spread fast. A video shot by a guest, capturing Jamal revealing himself as the owner, blew up online. Thousands shared it with one message: judging by appearances is the fastest way to embarrass yourself. Jamal Carter's name grew even bigger, but he didn't chase interviews or the spotlight. His focus was elsewhere, changing the hotel's culture from the inside. He started with the big moves. Mark Thompson, the manager who'd tried to eject him, was fired with cause. He tried suing, but the paperwork and witness accounts proved his discriminatory behavior. The courts sided with the company, and Mark left not just jobless, but with a tarnished name. The receptionist and maid who'd mocked Jamal were let go too, though unlike Mark, they got a chance to write formal apologies to the CEO, owning their mistakes. Jamal, though firm, didn't hold grudges. "I don't want blind punishment," he told the new team in a meeting. "I want change. That's all that matters." And that's what he did. In the months after, Jamal rolled out a mandatory program called Human Sight, with trainings led by Black professionals, community leaders, social psychologists, and diversity experts. Everyone from baristas to managers had to join. "No one's pretending they've learned here. You'll live the change," he said plainly. The hotel got a facelift too. Jamal commissioned a mural for the lobby, painted by Bronx teens, showing Black workers in all walks of life, executives, teachers, scientists, entrepreneurs. A bold sign went up at the entrance. "Here, no one's judged by their clothes, their skin, or their roots. Humanity comes before the badge." The vibe shifted. Guests felt it. New staff brought fresh eyes, and even old-timers rediscovered themselves. Malik, the promoted guard, became a symbol of how small acts could change everything. He looked me in the eye. "That's it, and it changed my life," he said, choked up at an early staff talk. The Carter Group started earning praise not just for top-tier hospitality, but for social responsibility and equality. Jamal kept working quietly, with the same humility he'd walked in with that day, now certain that justice didn't need to be loud to be strong. Months later, the Carter Plaza had transformed not just in service or rules, but in its soul. The walls seemed to glow anew, reflecting what Jamal always believed: dignity isn't negotiable. Guests sensed the difference in the air. Staff smiles stopped being forced, their once robotic moves now warm. Many who'd acted out of habit began acting from awareness. Jamal still visited his hotels the same way, low-key, simple, unannounced, not to test anyone, but to remind himself where he came from and why he fought. One Saturday, he returned to the Carter Plaza and was met with a teary hug from Malik, now head of security. "Sir, you don't know how much you changed everything here and in here," he said, tapping his chest. That same day, Jamal named the new general manager, Jessica Evans, a Black single mom and former laundry worker who'd shown in the trainings and shown leadership. "No one's better to run this place than someone who knows what it's like to be overlooked and still push forward," Jamal said, moving everyone there. Jessica took the role, eyes wet, saying, "You didn't just change my life, you changed how I see myself. For the first time, I believe I can." The hotel became a national benchmark for inclusion and respect. Talks, documentaries, and articles popped up, but Jamal shied away from the limelight. "This isn't my story, it's ours. I was just one piece in a system that needed to shift." And so, Jamal left a legacy far beyond buildings and profits, a blueprint of courage, empathy, and above all, resistance with dignity. Because when the world shuts a door in your face, sometimes you've got to build the whole damn building.